Or if it's better than music, it's jazz.
Well, hello and welcome once again to The Backward Glance, my retro look at 4 of the most iconic Star Trek series of yesteryear. We're talking about Classic Trek, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and of course, Voyager. I'm your speaker and fellow Star Trek fan on this end, Lal Winstrom, and I invite you to join me for our second exploration and reflection on some of my personal favorite episodes from these 4 series. This time, we're going into danger with Captain Kathryn Janeway and the crew of the USS Voyager as they get trapped in the void. It's an ordinary day aboard Starship Voyager, and the crew are at dinner hosted by Neelix and Seven of Nine. Seven is our chef of distinction, preparing a 3-course gourmet meal for the ship's senior officers. And everyone is basking in the toothsome flavors of meats and veggies and wines, when suddenly this fanciful occasion is unhappily disrupted by a spatial anomaly. Voyager is forcibly sucked inside a closed region of subspace where there are no stars, no planets, and, to our hero's great misfortune, no steady sources of energy either. And to make matters worse, the void, as it is euphemistically called, is filled with hostile alien life forms driven to compete with one another for resources in order to survive. And once inside, Voyager becomes unwittingly subject to this competition when she is immediately attacked by aggressive opponents determined to take from the ship whatever they can. But all hope is not entirely lost, as a good Samaritan, such as he is, comes to Voyager's aid and presents himself as a potential ally. Enter General Valen, who offers his time-won wisdom on how to survive in the void through competition based on raid and plunder in exchange for advanced weaponry. Naturally, Janeway, the good moral and upright Starfleet captain she is, refuses this offer. But Janeway and company are also in a fight for survival and a race against time, as Voyager's materials and power reserves slowly shrink to naught. So, they cannot afford to dawdle in indecision for too long, as Valen himself tells them.
Wait a few weeks until your resources start to run out. Morality won't keep your life support systems running.
I'm sorry, General. There are some compromises I won't make.
Not yet.
It is in this refusal to compromise her principles, conjoined with the understanding of her crew's weakening position, that compels Captain Janeway to take the decision to get out of the void with all deliberate haste. They make their first escape attempt, which fails, forcing the captain to seek new allies if Voyager's crew is going to live to try again. But before this occurs, we see that even Janeway wrestles with the thought of Valen's words once confronted with the reality of their situation when they meet the General for a second time after discovering his own raid on the ship that first raided them.
I knew I'd see you again, Captain. I expect you've reconsidered my proposal.
We're not here to trade. We're here to take back what belongs to us.
I don't know what you mean.
Our scans indicate you've got some of our food, one of our consoles, and a large quantity of our deuterium.
We didn't take any of that from you.
No. Apparently you killed the crew of another ship and took it from them. We want it back.
That's not the way things work here.
And so apparently, even in this cutthroat setting, there is some form of honor amongst the thieves. For while Valen did not steal Voyager's supplies directly from them, according to the values of the Void, if you will, goods stolen from Party A, Voyager, cannot be retaken by Party A from Party C, Valen, once acquired from Party B, the original offending thief. How mathematically charming and complicated this ethical equation must become, the longer one stays trapped in the void. But the dilemma does not stop there, for 7 of 9 soon tells Janeway,
I'm detecting large quantities of food on a supply deck.
Maybe we should take it while we have the chance.
Is it ours?
No, but our own reserves are running out.
Valen wouldn't hesitate to take it from us.
No, he wouldn't. We've got what's ours. Reverse course.
This decision by the captain prompts some vexation, which is clearly seen on the faces of the crew, and later voiced by Tuvok and Chakotay in Janeway's ready room, and even questioned by Janeway herself, which leads us back then to the reality Valen articulated when they first met.
We want to be clear about what our policy is going to be while we're here in the void.
You think we should have taken Valen's food?
Logic suggests we may have to be more opportunistic if we intend to survive.
We may not like Valen's tactics, but he and his crew are still alive after 5 years in here.
I was thinking about that myself. I thought maybe I could get some guidance from the Federation Charter. I was hoping I'd find a loophole that would allow us to take actions we ordinarily wouldn't take.
What was so interesting to me about this scene was that even the former Maquis, now First Officer, and Tuvok, two gentlemen who were often at odds with one another, were in equal harmony here, with Tuvok going so far as to suggest that logic itself justified Voyager becoming, as he put it, more opportunistic in this situation, while Janeway sat in the dark all by her lonesome, pondering ways to, shall we say, creatively interpret the Federation Charter to suit their needs in the present moment. But her thought processes also confused and concerned me on my first viewing, because was it not less than 1 year before the events of this episode that Janeway herself lectured a fellow starship captain when he faced a similar quandary for survival? How many of you remember Captain Rudolph Ransom and the crew of the USS Equinox, also lost in the Delta Quadrant for years and suffering the ignominy of starvation and the degradation of their ship?
Starfleet Regulation 3, Paragraph 12. In the event of imminent destruction, a captain is authorized to preserve the lives of his crew by any justifiable means.
I doubt that protocol covers mass murder.
In my judgment, it did.
Unacceptable.
We had nothing. My ship was in pieces. Our dilithium was gone. We were running on thrusters. We hadn't eaten in 16 days. We had just enough power to enter orbit of an M-class planet. It's easy to cling to principles when you're standing on a vessel with its bulkheads intact, manned by a crew that's not starving.
It's never easy. But if we turn our backs on our principles, we stop being human. I'm putting an end to your experiments, and you are hereby relieved of your command. You and your crew will be confined to quarters.
Please, show them leniency. They were only following my orders.
Their mistake.
In fact, some of Ransom's own crew were adopted by Voyager once the Equinox was destroyed, and may have in fact survived to be on board the ship in the sequence of these events. What then would they think of the senior officer who threatened their captain with arrest, who stripped them of military rank and subjected them to discipline, thereafter proceed to consider taking similar actions to those of their own commanding officer? After all, was he not only trying to do what she was trying to do, ensure the survival of his crew, of his family? So, what gives? These matters may remind some of you veteran fans of this thoughtful interaction between Quark and his nephew Nog from Deep Space Nine's The Siege of AR-558, and it suggests that we humans cannot afford to simply dismiss our animal instincts, to pretend that the more base desires of our nature cannot still govern our behavior, no matter how far into the future our species advances.
Let me tell you something about humans, nephew. They're a wonderful, friendly people, as long as their bellies are full and their holosuites are working. But take away their creature comforts. Deprive them of food, sleep, sonic showers. put their lives in jeopardy over an extended period of time, and those same friendly, intelligent, wonderful people will become as nasty and as violent as the most bloodthirsty Klingon.
But to answer the question, what gives is that Janeway wrestled with the alternative of becoming, as Quark put it, a nasty and violent human, and did not surrender to it. What gives is that she counted the cost of taking such wicked actions, weighing them on the scales of justice and integrity, and did not leave those scales imbalanced, unlike Captain Ransom. And so there is little further need for confusion when examined in this light, for Janeway passed her private test of conscience, emerging victorious not only in the battle against herself, as it were, but for the rest of her crew, who looked to her for an example, including, in this case, Chakotay and Tuvok.
But I've become convinced that we've got to stick to our principles, not abandon them.
Should the crew be ready to die for those principles?
If the alternative means becoming thieves and killers ourselves, yes.
Forgive me, Captain, but why would anyone who has survived by killing and stealing suddenly agree to those terms?
We'll offer to share our food and medical supplies, and defend ships that are attacked by raiders.
Captain, maybe you'd better take another look at that inventory. Our food and power reserves will be gone within a week. If we start giving everything away...
And maybe we'll only survive for 2 days instead of 7. On the other hand, if we share what we have instead of hoarding it, we might find other people willing to do the same. If we combine our technology, we can find ways of improving our situation, and ultimately get the hell out of this place. We may lose a little weight, gentlemen, but we won't lose who we are.
I would dare assert that Captain Janeway made us proud to be Star Trek fans in that moment, and thus begins her efforts to form a micro-federation inside the Void, one that will ultimately become the salvation of those who choose cooperation over competition. But the task is not easy, as is demonstrated by her first potential recruit, Captain Garen of the Nigerian people, who naturally questions what complementary benefits there are to joining an alliance, unwilling to use its collective strength to survive by whatever means necessary, including violence. And here we observe that Janeway stands firmly but diplomatically by her principles, conceding that their situation is grave but not insurmountable. Garen is skeptical, but does not outright dismiss her idea, leaving the door open, and on my original viewing of the episode back in the day, suggesting to me that Garen was himself an individual of uprightness and conscience, willing to at least attempt to do the civilized thing, even when doing so might put him at a disadvantage. But Mr. Garen rightly seems to require proof of Janeway's high-mindedness, and she provides that proof. First, by gifting him food and medical supplies with nothing asked for in return, and then, later, in a much more dramatic way, by defending rather than attacking a new ship that gets pulled into the Void.
Garen's hailing.
Get a weapons lock on him. We've been fooled by unexpected allies before.
Why are you targeting me?
Because I don't know what your intentions are.
Haven't I just made them clear? I've decided to accept your offer.
Well, in that case, welcome to the Alliance.
You gotta love that confident strut that she makes to the center of the bridge, don't you? I mean, it's actually rather indicative of Janeway's character overall throughout the life of the series, and one that her future self, Admiral Janeway, will come back in time to be a bit critical of in the series finale, when she returns to bring them home decades earlier than they actually would have made it otherwise. But it is actually an interesting character observation, and perhaps something that if you want to do at some point a character analysis of Janeway, to see how this manifests itself throughout the life of the show, even in her moments of self-doubt and reflection. But I did find it humorous here. Anyway, this theatrical moment in Janeway's diplomacy is finally rewarded, and her micro-federation, or alliance, is born. Not only by dint of Mr. Garen's pledge, but those of others who, seeing its benefits, also decide to swear allegiance, including the Overlooker ship that was itself under attack in the previous scene. Now, we don't know how long anyone besides Valen had been in the Void, except for the newcomers, of course, and thus, as a consequence, what they may have done or maybe thought they had to do to survive while there. So, the probability that some less than appetizing personalities may wish to join the Alliance is quite strong, and the unsavory circumstances of its formation, in fact, does come to invite opportunists and others of not so sterling character to join, who see it as a chance to latch on to strength and power, not in order to do the right thing, mind you, but to serve their own interests. And we get to see such a character in the coming scene. Meet Commander Bosal, an apparently charismatic being whose influence possibly helps to bring others into the Alliance, and whose ship possesses powerful technology that could in fact help everyone to escape the Void, but whose personal ethics are also less than desirable. He begins his sojourn on Voyager by insulting another Void refugee, Phantome. And here let me back up and introduce Phantome properly. We don't know his species name or where they actually come from, but it is speculated by the Doctor that Phantome and his kind may be native to the Void. They are a very intelligent race, with quite a resilient physiology that allows them to exist in a near vacuumless environment for unknown periods of time. They may even be telepathic, according to the Doctor. But Bosal refers to them as vermin, and states that he'd exterminate them if his sensors could pinpoint their location on his ship, and he urges Janeway to do the same. Both the Captain and the Doctor react disdainfully to these statements, with the Doctor being quite vocal and loud in his disgust. But Janeway curbs his outrage, while proposing a solution designed to appease Bosal and maintain his enthusiasm to join the Alliance. In time, her proposal will become pivotal to their effort to escape the Void. Even so, we have yet to see the true depths of Bosal's foul nature, for once it is determined that a critical piece of technology needed to escape the Void exists on another species' ship, Bosal's dirty deeds become even more filthy. In order to acquire the device, he kills the crew and takes it, thereafter returning to Voyager, whose people have no knowledge of what he has done. Yet, once it is discovered, Captain Janeway's indignation at his loathsome character is complete, and she demands he get out and take the besullied unit with him. Janeway's actions, though unquestionably righteous, severely hinder her people's efforts to build the technology required to successfully break free of the Void, and offend other Alliance members who side with Bosal in abandoning the partnership. And in her decision's wake, another grave issue arises. It is soon learned that Bosal has formed a coalition of his own with his kindred spirit inside the Void, General Valen, and that together they plan to attack Voyager and the remaining members of the Alliance.
We recorded a tactical conversation that took place between them just a few minutes ago.
Don't underestimate Janeway. I've been in battle with her twice.
Then you know Janeway's tactics. I have 2 other ships. We can take Voyager's food and weapons if we work together.
The rest of their conversation suggests they will attack within the next 48 hours.
I'm so glad we taught them the value of cooperation.
Our power reserves will be severely depleted if we're forced to defend ourselves.
Tell B'Elanna we don't have time to test her modulator. We've got to try to escape now.
And thus begins the race to the finish, the final push by Voyager and the Alliance to escape the Void before the Bosal-Valen assault overwhelms them. Wasn't that just a lovely and inspiring musical interlude? Watching the Alliance members working as a unified whole, coalescing their skills and talents toward this affirmative purpose. I personally have always been a fan of seeing muted action such as this overlaid with an exceptional musical score. And to me, such things add to the flavor of a story overall. And the beauty of this composition, in my opinion, was grace to the ears. And so I thought I'd share that that enthusiasm for this exceptional musicality with you here. You can, of course, hear the entire thing. I didn't play it all, and I wasn't going to play all of it towards to the end of Voyager's escape into normal space, but you can hear the entire thing by watching the show to get its full uplifting and soaring effect, because this music does, in fact, represent the climax of Voyager's escape back into normal space. Janeway's alliance was based on the foundation that the Federation is not simply an amalgamation of territories bound by treaties and guarded by space fleets. It is an idea that the whole is indeed greater than the sum of its parts, that our differences, when respected, make us stronger, not weaker, by adding new outlooks and solutions to problems. Through her actions, Janeway proved that the idea of the Federation can span the galaxy, perhaps even the universe, and it is this spirit of fellowship that is splendidly encapsulated in this episode, and which makes it one of the finest hours not just of Voyager history, but of Star Trek itself. I hope you've enjoyed this look back, this backward glance of the void with me, and I look forward to sharing more with you when we come together once again to reminisce and remember those days gone by. I leave you now as we began with a composition of jazz guitarist Norman Brown from his 1999 release, Celebration. This is Out of Nowhere. So, to all you Star Trek fans of good character and noble ideals, to you in whom that flame of the upward reach of man still burns fervently, until next time, I bid you live long and prosper. And remember, as Commander Riker said, it's better than music, it's jazz.